Idea. Hello and welcome, YouTube. This is Hawkissimo, and in this session, we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to do some live coaching. We're going to go through a Zeus build and ways of approaching Zeus as a specific example, because that's what this particular viewer wanted to cover. I already know that I have a Zeus video, but it's a couple months old, so we'll cover in some detail what my thought processes are as we go through. So what I did is I just went into the main menu, came to gods, went down to mage, used my L2 trigger to get to the last page, highlighted Zeus. The first section that I like to talk about are the ability builder and then item builder. But before we even get into that, the reason that we're talking about Zeus is because he's on the free rotation list. Yes, I have him diamond. Yes, I have him close to a gold star as well. And all of that said, with me having my most played god at 4%, and then it starts to get 3% lower. So it just shows that he's still managed to hit my cycle a lot. He was one of the early gods that I played a ton with. I find he's very effective in modes like assault or arena, where team fights are going to be happening, and so the fact that he has a huge area of effect is nice. His limitations, though, are his speed. His physical movement speed is slow, and none of his abilities provide him a boost in any way, shape, or form. So, high damage with the risk of having... Here, let me unplug this bird thing. With the risk of being caught out of position. So, with Zeus, you're going to want to be very mindful about where you are in relation to your teammates and where you are in relation to your enemies. So that said, he's got pretty good cooldowns. You see 10 seconds, 10 seconds on his 2, 10 seconds on his 3. His ultimate has 90 seconds, and his passive has nothing to do with timing. But what that means is there's up to 40% maximum as a cooldown, which means that you could get your cooldowns down to 6 seconds, which gives you an outside shot of using them twice in one combat. I find that 5-6 seconds is kind of the threshold for a lot of combats. They're over within a second or two longer. So at that point, don't knock yourself out trying to get 15-second cooldowns down, thinking, oh, I'll be able to use that ability twice in one combat. No. Somebody's taken enough damage that they're either dead or they've fled. But in that 5-second, 6-second cooldown, you may well be able to get them off. All right. So, that said, let's talk about the ability builder. I'm a big believer, regardless of whether you are manually progressing your abilities or having the system do it, in setting up what the default would be for the system. And I don't think it's worth arguing a lot over the specific sequence that you use. Just establish a sequence. The way that you determine who you should and shouldn't advance their ultimate every time you get it should be, how much extra damage am I getting, and is there a secondary effect like additional buffs to the cooldowns and whatnot. Zeus has such a huge radius that 30 unit range is good, so I do level it, although I wouldn't freak if somebody said I'll get it up to level 3 and then I'll sort of pull back, because he doesn't have additional CC that comes, he doesn't have additional cooldown that comes and whatnot. So some of what you're seeing in this build is simply a product of the volume that I've played him and knowing the formats then I'm going to play him. I want that area of effect out in like Arena and whatnot. In Days of Haste and Fatalis, if you're looking at old builds online, Zeus used to be able to play like a hybrid character. So every god should be reviewed to determine whether they're auto attack based, whether they're ability based, or whether they're a hybrid. Zeus is a ability based god. He has very quick cooldowns. He has good damage numbers that come out of these, but he could be tweaked to play like a hybrid. So let's talk builds. So there, I just cleared my initial build. I don't care what the hell it said. Let's do it from the fly. No matter which god we're talking about, always set up this initial page. So when you first come here, you're going to see what the standard build is. If you hit your triangle again, you'll see what the default is for Arena. So if you don't do what I'm showing you right now, this is the sequence that the auto builder would buy for Zeus in Arena versus in every other mode. These builds do not get robustly updated by Hi-Rez. And so there is no instance where I say, hey, you should just use the default build. No, don't do that. Go in, set up the custom template, and do it for two reasons. The first is so that if your auto builder turns on or you simply want to use auto builder, you're following the decision tree that you set up. But more importantly is the idea that every second that you spend in the fountain is golden XP that you're not getting by being within the assist range of other things that are dying. So it doesn't matter whether it's a buff camp, a minion wave, or enemy god. If you ain't there, you ain't getting those bonuses. So you are forsaking your advancement. Spend as little time in the store. Well, how do you do that? You set up this template because there's more than enough space to take the 6 items that you're going to have plus the starter that you're going to sell, your 2 relics and your 2 consumables, which means that the first page of the store is what this template shows. So I'm a big believer, and if you watch any of my other videos, in always setting up your template the same way to minimize the thought time. So I always start top to bottom, left to right, the sequence that I want. So I start with my consumables. If you're new and you want to start with Chalice of Healing, that's fine, and have the extra buffer of health. So let's go ahead and do that. And then put a checkbox in it. And you see how the lower right-hand section filled that in? Yes, no?
Yes.
Perfect. So the next one, we're going to go to consumable. All right. I'm a big believer in wards, so I'm going to advocate putting a ward there, and in fact 2, and you'll end up doing that by using your R1 and R2, I'm sorry, R1 and L1 triggers to just change the quantities. But I think that that's strong. Then we go into starter items, and the 3 prevailing thoughts on starter items for mages is Sands of Time versus Soulstone versus Vampiric Shroud. I should have a video that covers just this specific topic, but I'll talk about it right here. Sands of Time is the cooldown option. Soulstone is about getting stacks on it and via basic attacks that puts charges on it and then dispersing the charges for even more damage. Vampiric Shroud has starting physical health and physical protection. So I would say at least 80% of the time, or the generic default start should be Sands of Time for most mages. But during God Selection, once you've picked your team and you've all locked, and then you go into loading screen, you do a head count every time. How many magic, how many physical do you see on the enemy side? If the answer is 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5 or physical, go ahead and take Vampiric Shrub, because the extra 10 protection and the extra 100 health will go a long way. Punish them for their bad team composition. And definitively do it if they're 5 out of 5. Soulstone shines in AA-based mages like Chronos, Soul, and again, you could get Zeus that way. One of the ways to determine how effective a starter item is in comparison with your normal items is multiply the cost by 3, and it would be $2,400. Multiply all of the effects by 3, and that's the effect per dollar spent. So in this example, if I'm advocating Sands of Time, which I am, if we multiply its cost to get it close to Bancroft Talon, for instance, one of the most popular mage items, so great, now they're $2,400 a piece. This one would give you 60 power. This would give you 15 MP5. This would get you 30% cooldown. Hey, Hawk, no item has 30% cooldown. I guess that's pretty good. So the power's a little underwhelming. Nobody buys an item strict for MP5 unless you're an assault. But the fact that it's for the dollar, the most efficient cooldown item in the game, means that it's very valuable. The fact that it has cheap power, quick, and some MP5 will save you some money on blue potions and/or those instances where your assassin did the team no favors by stealing blue buff from you. Thanks, teammate. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I know you want it, but come on now, think about who gets the best effect for it. And the passive would be awesome. So, this would be the equivalent of getting 6 additional MP5 on top of this starting base for every 10% missing. So it's efficient at early sustained. So that's why I advocate that. And then boots. Boots. So one of the things that you'll notice is when I came to this tree, I just highlighted the first boot because then I can maneuver around in between. That's a time step savings that you can use in the store when you're navigating through other things. All boots are useful. I don't want to say that there are garbage boots and there are not garbage boots, but there are those that are more useful to more people in more situations. And the quick answer for that is Shoes of the Magi for mages is exactly what you want because of the penetration. I'll talk a little bit more about why that penetration is so important. The common choice that I see, though, people make is Shoes of Focus. Shoes of Focus isn't bad. There's only a 5 power difference between the two. And unlike physical, where every point of physical power is a 1-to-1 relationship between that and the your auto attack. So if you add 10 power, your basic attack hits 10 more power for all of the physical gods. Magical, that's not true. The scaling is completely different. In fact, it's half of that number. So the 5% or the 5 points is nothing in terms, it's 2.5 points of your auto attack damage. But how much it impacts your abilities depends completely upon the scaling. I'll talk about that as well. It's really about the penetration. It's a penetration decision. So your start really should be looking like this. I'm going to save this and talk about scaling for a second. All right, so Chain Lightning is your 1. If you were using PC, literally you'd be hitting your 1 key to shoot it, your 2 for the next 3 and 4. So that's why people still use that terminology. Any ability that has damage has the damage colon and then flat numbers, parentheses, some percentile may be there. That percentile is called your scaling. So if I add 5 points of damage, I'm only getting 50% of that on his 1. I'm only getting 50% on the first hit of initial damage, and then I'm doing basic attack damage on the static, which is confusing. 18% here and 50% here. So one way of looking at that is Zeus's scaling is nothing like 25, 60, 10, 100, but then let's get a little bit sassier. And these are why there are variations. 75, 90, nothing. This is a movement ability and mana ability and a vision ability. And then 120, well, guess who gets more advantage from scaling power straight up? She does. And there are things long term that will change how you approach your build as a consequence for that. I guess I hadn't really broken this down in my head before. The other thing that you want to think about is that scaling, does it apply to a single instance, or are there multiple instances that come from this ability? So here you could see that the Chain Lightning fires its first burst, and then it arcs between other nearby opponents. So the truth is, it's the damage, and then you're going to get up to 4 arcs, each one having the scaling applied, which means that we're at 250% scaling. Right? The first one plus 4 arcs. So it's not that you're hitting the one opponent for 250, but your power is in fact being dispersed across a bunch of different targets, which is a different way of thinking. And now what you're hearing and seeing and experiencing is that, damn, Smite's complex, right? Aegeus Assault, that's when he throws out his shield, and the shield sits there and lingers in that spot for 5 seconds. Just throwing out the shield does its initial damage. Again, poor scaling. I consider poor scaling anything below 75% for its first. But it's not true, because it's lingering there for 5 seconds, and you have the option to basic attack it, which is you throwing your little auto attack lightning bolt, or use your Chain Lightning to hit it, which will then cause the basic attack damage that you do plus a bonus of the static damage. So it's whatever the hell your basic attack is going to hit for, plus 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So tricky. And it's, again, why I said, like, wow, man, I don't know who the hell was smoking what when they said Zeus is a great starter god. No. There's too much to be thinking about with Zeus. But fear not. Like, the reality is, a great many of new players don't even think about these things. They just say, I'm building power indiscriminately, and I'm not even going to bother with pen, and it'll all work out. And to some extent, that's true. But I want to teach you the build that you're going to start with is not going to be the build that you use when you're rank 5 with him, is not going to be the build when you're diamond with him. The build that you use in Assault is going to be very different than you would use in Arena or Clash or Joust or Conquest. Match of the Day may also grossly influence. Sorry. His third ability is all about the fact that his other abilities are putting little static charges on people, as is his passive. So every time you hit somebody with a basic attack, you're putting a charge against them, and that's increasing the subsequent damage that's coming. But you can also blow that stuff up. So people have 0, 1, 2, 3 charges on them, and then you get to blow it up and make them take even more damage, which is great. And I would advocate thinking about that and holding those charges till they start trying to run away. Too many new players retreat too late, right? And so they don't even realize that there's all this extra damage that you're about to blow up on them. And then finally, his ultimate's a big, fat, hunkin' wide area of effect thing. So that's Zeus's abilities in a nutshell. And you could make arguments, if you're trying to build him as a hybrid style, where you want to hit them with a lot of auto attacks, then detonate charge becomes a priority, because you're going to be hitting them. You want to then blow up those charges and get as much extra damage that way. If you're trying to go ability based, then you're looking at these others.
Yeah.
So let's talk. I'm going to be completely freaky. I'm going to talk about the mage who I think you should start with, which is Ra. But not because he's a healer. Don't think of Ra as a healer. He incidentally has healing. The truth is, he's a sniper that most new players don't think of as a sniper. From an ability stance, his 1 and his ult have good range. Look at his scaling. 80. This is a blind, and used when assassins and warriors, melee people are up in your grill hitting you. You'll put this, you'll be slowing them down. When it explodes after 2 seconds, it'll also blind them. So it's not really your damage source, which is why its scaling isn't that great. But here you have a damage over time effect that affects everything. Doesn't matter whether it's a minion camp, doesn't matter whether it's a minion wave, doesn't matter whether it's the Gold Fury or Apotheosis or the enemy. It also impacts all your allies. All your allies, not just gods. So you're healing your minion waves, keeping them alive longer. So what makes Ra so strong, and he'll never phase out of conquest meta, and I don't often talk conquest meta because there are tons of pros who stream that content, but during a team fight, casting Solar Blessing is hurting all the enemies in that area and helping all your allies simultaneously. Casting it on just a minion wave is probably wasteful. You are walking away from this boon and bane effect that has a lot of different things happening, and you want to save this for team fights. And then his ultimate, 100% scaling, 700 power at top level, plus 100% of your power. You're going to have well over 500 power. You snipe somebody for 1200 damage, believe me, they know it. And so when you stop thinking about him as a healer, like your job is healing, well, let's back it up, son. Patches in Season 4 made Ra's healing very different. The actual healing number was lowered, but it's also doing damage, and it's also giving protections. Let's talk protections. Oh boy, so much to cover to teach somebody Smite. Let's do it this way. You got a sheet of notebook paper?
Yeah.
I have not done this video, and it's why I'm really thinking about getting a PC. It's so hard to do any editing on PlayStation, right? I can't just pull up my Excel spreadsheet and share that. Like, how? At least I'm unaware of a way to do that. If you or any other viewer has a way to do that, contact me, man. Because I would love to be able to use my Ethernet port to share spreadsheets and Word docs. But do you see how using the L2, R2 can change the level?
Yeah.
Which means that you can see what the base numbers for every god is in terms of everything. Their basic attack damage, how much health they're going to have, how much mana they're going to have, blah, 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 all across. Hey, Assassin, what's going on? One of my other viewers / friends is watching. So I'm trying to cover some Smite basics for a Paragon player. And if you want my PSN streaming community thing is up, so you can join there or just keep watching, up to you. So one of the things that I want to point out here is what is the starting protection and what is the ending protection for each of the 5 classes for both physical and magical. So you will get an advanced copy of what I plan on doing a video. Take a sheet of paper, draw a line right down the mid of that page so you have an upper section and a lower section. We're talking about a standard sheet of notebook paper that has like 3-hole punch to the left.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So go not on the top line, but a little bit down from that, 1 or 2 lines down, and write physical protection on that upper section. And then below your midway line, write magical protection. Under the words physical protection, write in each having their own unique line in this sequence: Hunter, Assassin, Warrior, so your 3 physical classes, and then Guardian and Mage. And then repeat that for the magical protection. So you should have a line drawn down the middle of your page from left to right, horizontally, a physical protection section up above with separate lines for each of the 5 classes. Same for the magical classes. What I'm going to do is I'm now going to create a grid for you that shows you at level 1, 5, 10, 15, and 20 how much physical protection does a hunter have, assassin, warrior, guardian, mage. Same for the magical protections for each of those. Make sense? So a hunter's, so I guess now to the right of the word hunter and a line above, just write like LVL1, put some space, LVL5, LVL10, LVL15, LVL20 for level 1, 5, 10, 15, 20. And now I'm going to give you the answers. What I did is I put into a spreadsheet every hunter, and I checked their base protections at level 1, 5, 10, 15, 20. I then averaged them so that I would know what the answer was for this, and I'm saving you all of that time and effort. So, level 1, we're just going to go straight down the list. A hunter has 15, an assassin has 16, a warrior has 21, a guardian has 22, and a mage has 14. At level 5, it's 27, 28, 33, 34, 24. I'm sorry, viewers, that I can't share this with you. Yeah, this is the physical protection with no items on that influence it, which, by the way, is going to be very common in low elo casual games. People don't build protections. It's friggin' retarded because they don't understand it. Because it's not like there's a great video in the Smite, getting started that covers this. But I will. Level 10, it's going to be 42, 43, 48, 49, 37. Level 15, again, we're still in physical. 57, 58, 63, 64, 50. And level 20, it's 72, 73, 78, 79, 63. The magical section is so much easier to document and talk about and use as an example to teach. So, Mage, 30 across the board. Never gets better. They start at level 1 with 30 protection and maintain that straight across the board. All the other classes start at 31 magical protection. And then the progression is 34 for all of them at level 5, 39 for all of them at level 10, 43 for all of them at level 15, and 48 for all of them at level 20. So,
why is it so much lower than physical?
It's a good question. There are 75% of the classes. 60% of the classes are physical, 40% are magical. That's not a count by gods. That's simply saying a hunter, assassin, and warrior are all physical, and all guardians and all mages do magical. That the scaling of, if I add 10 power to a physical power, I've added 10 points to my basic attack damage, guaranteed, and then how much ability damage that adds is a byproduct of the scaling number, right? So that will vary by god, but when we're talking about a physical god, doesn't matter which one. If you were to look at, right now I have AMC up. If I'm level 1, I'm starting with a 40 point of basic attack damage. If I add this, it's 60. Because it's 20 points of power. Do you see how the 20, 60 followed by the 20? And then when I take it off? So it's 1-to-1. Every point of power is different. So every physical god, when they're making their decision on boots between Ninja Tabby and Warrior Tabby, Warrior Tabby is literally providing 2 times the damage number that Ninja Tabby is. That's something to really think about. This is half again. Even Talaria Boots has more power than your Reinforced Greaves. Now, there are other differences within these that provide use cases where they may or may not be advantageous. But in physical god land, every point of power has a 1-to-1 ratio between how much your basic attack will hit. And if that means if you're an auto attack based god, you have to prioritize, making sure that you've got a good mix of power in there and not just speed. Because if I rush a Psy, I'm hitting 20% faster and I'm getting some lifesteal, but I'm getting lifesteal off that lower number. Had I put boots on, I'd be either adding 50% to the base damage that I had with Ninja Tabby, or 100% of the damage, and then go into lifesteal. I'm lifestealing on 150 of what the starting was, or 200% of the starting number is. Which one do you think is better? And when you think about it that way, you'll see why that sequence is not anywhere near as good as the reverse sequence. They both have the same, once they're both completed, you're getting the same effect, but you got to think about your power scale. So Smite has a minimum of 4 phases to the game, with the likelihood in casuals of hitting a 5th phase, which is different than how I've heard every other streamer ever talk about the game. They talk about 3 phases of the game. They talk about early game, mid game, late game. And I say they're missing 2 phases. The missing 2 phases are that first 2-minute period. I'm going to call that the first blood period. That initial spawn, how much time you waste in the store, where you initially rotated to and prepared for battle, and did somebody give up first blood and give the enemy team advantage. And again, the advantage can come from dying, it can come from you lingering as a team or as an individual too long in the fountain, it can come by rotating to a space that wasn't tactically important to the flow of that early part of the game. You're trying to just get through those first 2 minutes with the minimal amount of setback and the maximum amount of gain, and then you're entering the early game. But what is horrible is when 2 of you die in that first 2-minute period. You have now really set your team back, because now they're dead in La La Land, and they're not getting the experience and gold for the stuff that's dying around them, causing them to fall further behind. So by the time they come back out, they're 1 to 2 levels back, even though it was a quick respawn timer, because the amount of experience that you needed in the low levels is low, and so you want to be extra cautious and just survive those first 2 minutes. The last phase that other streamers don't talk about is because they're pros, or the majority of them are pros, and they hope to never hit this phase, but it happens all the time in casuals, and it happened all the time in Paragon, which is the holy fuck, this game has lingered on 30, 40 minutes or longer, and everybody's at full build or near, and you're waiting for a team fight mistake that will turn and end the game. You watch the SPL pro games, and they rarely go past 25 minutes, and they've already ripped the Phoenix down 3 times, the Fire Giant twice. They're pushing their objectives, be they the monsters or the structures. In casuals, there are too many people that mistakenly think that a MOBA is a first-person shooter, and they're too worried about their KDA and not on how much structure damage should I get done. Have I pushed the objectives? Are we actually working towards endgame, which is agnostic to how many kills our team got? It really is.
I watched your Hoagie stream yesterday.
Yeah.
You talked about that.
Well, and after talking about it for more than a year, it was completely validating last weekend, maybe it was 2 weekends ago, to watch the SPL stream and to see one of the most anticipated series go down, where the one of the pro teams was hyper aggressive about never rotating away from tower if they had a minion wave there, to take a poke or 2 at the tower, because that tower never heals that damage. And they were consistent and relentless at putting that damage out, which meant that the structures fell, and they accelerated the entire pace of that game. And it didn't matter that they didn't have the same amount of kills. It didn't matter whether they were falling behind in player damage, because as long as you're not dying, who cares? And they were able to take it. And I had that thought process, and some people in my clan come from Guardians of Middle-earth, which was the MOBA on PlayStation 3, which was a far less complex MOBA. I mean, Smite has much more gods, more items, more nuance. You know, I'm never going to take that away from Smite. But Guardians of Middle-earth had an entire character class called the Tactician, who's built around push and not KDA-based stuff, objective push. So they either buffed or debuffed minion waves. They either buffed or debuffed structures. They helped you push the lane. Like, if you rotated out to go get a camp and a Gothmog or Hildefons was in your lane, you came back 4 seconds later and your tower's half dead. Don't ever leave them alone. And people would do it because, oh, well, the minion wave was dead. Well, you could summon archers. So you could use the equivalent of a relic to just summon 3 minions. And that's all they needed. They just needed just a little bit of stuff to absorb a poke or two, because they could buff and get advantages to doing that. And so Gnome players learned the effectiveness of structure push and backdooring. And again, Smite took steps to take away backdooring, saying it was no fun. Well, it's no fun if the majority of your player base tries to treat the MOBA like an FPS, and they're running around trying to get their kills and assists, and I'm not playing that game. Yeah, alright, whatever, I'm going to take Loki. I'm actually not going to be building him as an assassin. I'm going to use my little summon clone thing under the tower, run under it. I have ridiculous amount of penetration for the structure, and I'm just going to rip the damn structure and run away like a coward. I'm a structure assassin. I'm not a people assassin, you know. And so, you know, they took steps to try and chill that stuff down with him and with Bastet using our cats for the same way. But it's not about the god mentality. It's about the player mentality. And I advise you to pay attention to that mentality, because you can, people don't know how to play from behind. They don't know. Like, they know, hey, we started to snowball because we got kills, or we started getting screwed and we're ready to concede. But you hit that god-awful stalled phase, holy crap, and they don't know how to effectively push objective. Alright. Back to, this is nice rambling, covering so many different things all at once. But these have been topics that come up all the time with some of my friends, and debates, frankly. You know, Hawk, why are you always triple the structure damage, but you don't get as much player damage? Because I'm a tactician. Player damage is a byproduct of them being in my way while I'm pushing objective. If they want to be stupid and rotate away, and you guys have a big side fight, and they're like, Hawk, rotate. No. In 4 seconds, this tower's dead. Believe me, they'll be rotating back to me, and they're like, yeah, but you're gonna die. I don't give a shit. One of you died anyway, team fighting. I died and accomplished the actual goal of the game, moving us to the enemy Titan. You died fighting over space that didn't matter to perpetuate the stall that was occurring, and inevitably occurs in game after game after game. You know, so I think, like, so coming back to Ra, he has fantastic scalings. He has 2 great snipe abilities. These abilities shoot through walls. Get used to the idea of the first time you're playing. Take a shot through a wall. Does it work? Yes or no? Good to know. The other reason I like Ra isn't just because he has a team heal, which includes him. He's part of the team. He has movement ability. He has a slow for people that are right up in his grill. But every time he casts an ability, his passive says he gets a movement speed boost of 6%. And it can stack up to 3 times, and it lasts 15 seconds. 15 seconds is an eternity. 8 seconds in Smite is an eternity. So it becomes hard to pin him down. There are gods with better movement things. A dash would be even better than just, a percentage of increase, but it's better than so many other mages. And so think of him as a glass cannon kind of mage, and now you're not playing the way others do, but it's still a very viable way to approach this god. All right, so sequence for your ability progression has counter pick potentials like mad. You'll never see the pros default these. Even if they set up the template, the truth is, after you pick your god, you can select auto build for your abilities or your items, and they'll have both off. I tend to leave my abilities on because I've set them up. But in Conquest, I would agree that building them on the fly is the most advantageous way. Outside of Conquest, yes, there's always advantages. Of course, there's nothing worse than getting it in the midst of a team fight and trying to navigate your damn controller in the midst of everything else to level it. And so I prefer to... I want to think about the things I want to think about that are allowing me to focus. Am I pushing the objective? Is my positioning correct? Oh yeah, how much damage am I able to put out to the enemy or the minions? And less about tracking some stack on my 20-point power starter item. Like, I'm not saying that it's not important. As a function of the starting power, it is, but by the time I'm 7th level, that's just some little niggly detail that, like, I personally don't want to deal with. The emphasis for Conquest players is minion clear first and foremost. That early game is 100% minion clear. The damage that you do, watch any solo laner, and you'll see. Yeah, they hit each other if the enemy was stupid enough to stand next to the minion wave, but given a choice of if I aim 5 degrees to the left, I'll hit the enemy solo lane. If I aim forward, I hit the minion wave. I aim forward, I hit the minion wave. The job is to clear the minion wave as fast as possible and then rotate out of the lane while they're still dorking around with my minion wave, because I did that first so that I could potentially clear a camp and then rotate back before the next minion wave is there, so that if all they did was take their minion wave, I've gotten XP gold advantage because I did that other thing as well. So, and that's because the spooling, the amount of progress you're getting just as a function of being on the map over time is lowest there. In other modes, it's not as important, but I still like minion clear, which means we start Celestial Beam. We then are forced to take something else. So in this instance, I would go to my heal. Why is this being fussy? I would do this, come back to my minion clear. You could go to you could improve your heal. I like to think, and so in Conquest, I would make that determination based on who is in my lane. If they're melee based and they're going to be up in my face, I'd want Divine Ruin. Otherwise, I'm taking Solar Blessing. Because Clash Arena and so many of the other casual modes inevitably means there's either a Guardian, a Warrior, or an Assassin. It means there's a melee dude who's going to be up in my grill at some point. Go ahead and take it. Prioritize my ultimate whenever I can. From here, it's real straightforward. I'm always going to prioritize my 1, followed by my... I'm going to prioritize my ultimate whenever I can take it, followed by my 1, followed by my 3, followed by my 2. So here I'm double advancing. Oh, I don't have a choice, so I come down, pick up the ult. I wouldn't cry, though, if you wanted this. The truth is, this is only 75 points per stack, but it's also the 5-second cooldown. That's the only reason that I... But you could do this in either order. You could do this and then come back, or, and I'm just using my L2 to come back, I could say, no, I want that, and then I'll finish this. I wouldn't argue with somebody in either case. At least it's a little bit of cooldown. 75 points, though, in and of itself, that's going to occur once every 60 or 65 seconds versus the fact that I'm going to be shooting this beam without cooldown every 10 seconds. Boy, I think I'd probably, more times than not, advance it in that sequence. So I'm really prioritizing the 1 followed by the ultimate. And then I'm going to come up here. I'm going to do this. Again, if I'm playing a team that has like 3-4 people that are going to be jumping literally into my face, I can think about taking a second level here. But this is so much utility with it that can be used both offensively and defensively. And just having one ability point here, I'm not worried about the 40 damage. I'm really... The 40 damage isn't why I'm taking this ability. The slow doesn't get better the more I have it, and it doesn't get more cooldown. But it is an ability that I can just cast to get movement speed. Right? And that's a viable thing. I will prioritize Searing Pain, my ultimate, over a healing stack, though. So do that, and then we're going to end. So I would say that that's... Oh, God. What the hell did you just do, Hawk? Make your life hard. Man, what the hell am I doing? I am button mashing like a madman here. See, I just did it again. No. Let's go get the ultimate, yes. Yeah, I want the option to shoot the ultimate. The level 5 ultimate I'm going to take before I take the other ability there. But from then on, at level 9, I want Celestial Beam followed by Searing Pain. Just because I know I'm going to be able to get this and shoot it so many more times. After that, Searing Pain has suddenly become the priority.
Should I hold a level? Like,
on PC, you could set it, but yeah, no, I don't. Well, if you're doing it manually, sure. But, motherfucker. I cleared it again. That's amazing. Alright, so the only thing I need to... You know what? I don't care. I'll fix it later. Ability-wise, or item-wise, you could see the basics before I clear it and do it. I don't carry mana potions with them because I have a self-heal. I don't carry health potions because I have a self-heal. I carry mana potions even though I'm taking a starter item to help me with my MP5. I carry wards. Wards do two things. Well, they do more than two things. They help prevent me from being ganked. But I'll tell you the truth, when I'm Loki, I drop more wards than not. They help me understand when enemies have rotated away to quote-unquote safety, so they're going to teleport back. And I'm Loki, I kill them. I'm raw, I see them, I shoot the friggin' wall and snipe them, and they're dead. So, and my map vision may be great. You know what? I'm playing with 4 other people, and I don't trust their map vision. They need the ping. Them dying screws up my game. You have to understand that as a fundamental. If you're in Call of Duty and the other team is squatting and you're not, or you are, but 3 of your dudes died, it doesn't matter that you didn't die. You're about to. You're certainly having a backpedal. If you were able to keep them alive for the low cost of 50, which outside of Conquest is nothing. And oh, by the way, you'll watch every pro stream. By the 10-minute mark, they're all carrying wards. Wards are all over the friggin' map. So, yeah, big proponent of wards. Sands of Time. I don't want to have to retreat back just to get mana. That's horrible. You lane presence equals bonus gold and XP. Lane friggin' presence. Stay there. And by having this, followed by that, I'm getting that. I haven't really talked about pen. I will, I promise. I'm going to end up sending you a screenshot, which I can't do via the broadcast, which is, again, why I want a PC, so I can show like Word docs and Excel docs. But it's a nice graphic that will explain protection versus pen clearer than I can do with words. I want my pen boots. I'm a sniper, and I want to make sure that all of that damage that I get is scaling through. Plus, you saw some of my scaling was as high as 100%, so that 5 extra points is 5 more points of damage. The classic start, by doing the build the way that we saw it, where it was, and you'll be able to watch this later and call me out if I build it in a different sequence or anything. This, I feel, is the generic core for every mage. Or, I should say, 90% of the mages. If you start this way, that means by the time you've built your starter plus 2 items, you have 50% of the maximum cooldown allowed in the game. You have 30 physical penetration, and you have the maneuverability to help you rotate away from problems, rotate to confirm kills, ganks, clear camps, return to lane. That is a very powerful combo. The answer for how powerful relied on that notebook paper that you saw, that I had you make out. How much magical protection does the enemy mage have?
30.
How much magical protection does everybody else have?
Like 30, 40 in between.
Yeah, it was 31 to start. You know, by the time I built this, they're at 34 to 39. I'm hitting for close to true damage. Without that, 25 points of protection equals you doing about 80% of your damage. So you've lost 20%. Early pen, very important in ensuring that all that damage hits. It will feel like you're hitting harder than you should to the enemy because they're used to taking and mitigating, ignoring, absolving themselves of all this percentage of damage. And you're like, no, that's not the game I'm playing. You're going to eat the damn damage. Then I go into things that are going to help me sustain. So if you wanted to go into lifesteal and pick up one of the lifesteal options, and really they're all fine with raw. I can make arguments for any of them. The generic catch one, catch all, bang for your dollar choice that most people make is Bancrofts, and they think there's no argument. There are arguments, but you get 100 power, you get 15% magical lifesteal. As your health decreases, you can get up to twice that power, the bonus 100, and an additional 20% lifesteal for a total of 35% lifesteal, 200 power. But you've got to be down around 20. Well, you've got to be exactly at 25% health to get that effect. Since you have a self heal, your hope is not to persist in that state, but it's certainly powerful. I think just as strong and very underutilized is Pythagorean Peace. This is, I have a video that talks about this, but I'm just going to repeat it here. The simple way to understand every single aura item that you need to understand is they screwed up the description. All aura items should read aura hyphen allied gods, comma, including yourself, comma, within blah, blah, blah.
So you get 24.
Including yourself is never mentioned on any of them, and the truth is it applies to all of them. So they also did one other disservice. So not only does its description suck, watch what happens to my power line when I put this on. I went from 145 to 185.
Yeah, it doesn't account for the 30.
Yeah, well, so now you're thinking, Hawk, maybe you're stoned and don't understand what the hell you just said. And the answer is no, I'm not. Let me explain. Auras only check when the item is in play. If you are dead, it's not in play. So only once you've spawned from the fountain does it say, let me check to see who's in 70 units. Are any allied gods there? Hey, am I an allied god of myself? The answer is yes. But it means that in the god builder, I think I'm only getting 40 power. The truth is, no, I'm getting 70 power. I'm getting 40 base plus the aura effect. I'm not getting 12% magical lifesteal. I'm getting 24% magic lifesteal because I got the base 12 plus the aura 12. And I've given power and lifesteal to every one of my allied gods around me. Plus I got cooldown. Yeah, okay, I lost 30 power. Agreed. The 30 power, 50% of that scaled to my basic attack, and then how much of the rest of it varied god by god. And so each god has to make a completely independent assessment of how high was their scaling.
Costs a little less too.
And it costs a little bit less. The very fact, though, that it's an aura item and is helping more than you in a format where... So in Conquest, the odds are very good through the sub 2 minutes, the early game. I'm only going to have 2 other gods allied around me for 90% of that time, right? And then in the mid game, there'll be a little bit more team fighting where there may be more frequency, but we've got to cover 3 lanes. So by the very nature of the map, we're spread out. In Arena, how many people do you have around you? 5. In Clash, yeah, there are 2 lanes, but, like, gods have ranges that can shoot from one to the other. So the truth is, the rotations happen so fast, you're in perpetual team fight. So Pythax shines in those kinds of roles. Pythax in Assault, if you don't build Pythax in Assault, you're a dick. I mean, you're just flat out. You're not only a dick, you're a moron. You have failed to fundamentally understand that format as a resource management format. Like, well, you can't return to Fountain whenever the hell you want to either go to the store or heal. There are no camps. So HP5, MP5 are critical, as is lifesteal. Well, this gives everybody on your team lifesteal. Like, this lets you sustain as a team and deal with that limited resource. And I don't care whether you're magical or physical. Like, to take a selfish item like Bancroft's Talent, I swear to God, if I could reach through computers, start choking people, there probably would be, we'd be working with 10% of the population in Assault, because Hawk would have choked them all to death. You dumbass! What the hell was wrong with you? But yeah, don't sleep on that. Certainly, if you're good about mixing in your autos, Polynomicon is good, but it's on the one basic attack. If your abilities have long cooldowns, that means that you don't get to mix it in as well. But on Hebo, whose one is on a 3-second cooldown, so I cast an ability, I immediately auto attack you, I get 75 points, and then, hey, 3 seconds later I can rinse and repeat? Sure. You have 15, 20-second cooldowns? No. All right, so another word on the other variation to start with. So I think there are 3 variations. Definitely those 2. My preference is to go into Spear of Deso because of its strong power, its 20 flat pen, it gives you 10% cooldown. I don't even pay attention to the fact that it has a passive, because that's not why I'm taking it. The fact that that's there is just cool, and the fact that it's not requiring me to last hit, an assist will do. Knock down another second. But if I was a dot mage, a damage over time mage like Anubis, where 50% of his kit is not burst damage, but doing ticks of damage. So Ra has both types, but his one and his ultimate are burst, and so I'll view him as a burst mage. But if you are a dot mage, then this spear is better. Why? Well, the description. The description says everything. It's cheaper, one, so you'll get it out faster, but it has less power. It has a little bit less pen, but again, you got it faster, which is nice, right? But it's the passive. Your damaging abilities, not your auto attacks, reduce your target's magical protection by 10 for 5 seconds, and it stacks up to 5 times. Which means that if you have something like Anubis Squat and Breathe, which is getting tick, 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 you've knocked down the 50 from the passive plus the base 15, that's 65. The cap on magical protection that any god has without building more or having an ability that does something was 48. You're hitting true damage, baby, off one ability. And all your subsequent abilities are now hitting for true damage because this thing lasts for 5 seconds. So, dot mage, spear mages, burst mage this. If there are healers, which includes life stealers, aplenty on the other team, Divine Rune, awesome. And vastly underappreciated. 8 seconds to reduce by 40% is ridiculous. Now, should it say reduced healing, regeneration, lifesteal, HP 5, potions of healing, chalice of healing, relics like meditation, but that's exactly what it means. It's all of that. And that incomplete description hides some of the intrinsic value. Do not be a noob and build Obsidian Shard in this spot. Tell me why. You know the answer. You have it on a sheet of notebook paper in front of you.
Well, because if you build Obsidian Shard, you're going off 10 penetration.
Yep.
10% of...
You've mitigated. You've taken their 30 down to 20. Whoopity-doo. Now, that item, I will say, is very good at structures, which have inherent protections that you want to punch through, but we're still way beyond that point in the game, right? Our first 3 items are about that 10-minute mark kind of period. And yeah, I'll put on some tower poke, but you know what? The other penetration helped me do that too. So don't overemphasize a percentage penetration in an environment where people haven't started stacking armor. You are not maximizing your build, and I cannot tell you how often I see it. And it doesn't matter whether I'm on this account, a Smurf account, my friend's account. I'm like, holy fuck, what the hell is wrong with people? Do you not know how to do math? To which I guess the answer is no, Hawk, we really don't. But the third option in this slot would be Bancroft's Talon. It's hard to argue with the idea of I'm sloppy with my positioning because I'm kind of getting used to the game, and so or Pythags, but if you're really sloppy with positioning, Bancroft's Talon. So sometimes I'm getting caught out of position, and then I'm getting pounded, you know, and the fact that it's an immediate spike to your power and lifesteal that lets you then attack back and potentially survive that exchange. Not bad.
I feel like Pythags is better on Raw.
Same. I wouldn't freak out if people bought Book of the Dead. My initial impression of Book of the Dead was not at all favorable. And I still think it's expensive for what it does. But the truth is, if you have good wave clear like Anubis, like Ra, it's very easy to stack this. So you'll get that shield back up just fine. What I like about Pythags for Ra, what I like about Pythags for Chanje, what I like about it for anybody who has heal in their core magic kit, is there's this expectation from your allies that you're going to be this uber kind of healer. This is taking some of that pressure off. Like, okay, I didn't cast my healing circle, but I gave you power and lifesteal. Heal yourself, man. Right? So, and the fact that it's also lifesteal for me, it's also cooldown for me. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I'm at 30% cooldown right now. Nothing wrong with that. So you have flexibility about what comes next. Any of those lifesteal options provide sustain. A lot of people will do this. They'll build Book of Thoth. And I'm never going to say don't build Book of Thoth. Book of Thoth is awesome. But you don't need a single stack. Like, I think a lot of people are building Book of Thoth because of the power spike. And they're not building it because they want the additional 125 mana or the MP5 or the 750 mana that they're getting when they fully stack it. They're building it for its starting 100 power and for that second line in the passive that says I'm going to convert 3% of your mana to power. But let's think and do math for a second. Here, I'm just de-checking rather than deleting. I can see how much mana I have at any given level. So it takes 16th level to break 1,000 mana. Because of the 125, I'd get it at 15th level. So if I only built that, my magical power suddenly spikes to 133. That's the 100 base plus converting 3% of the 1100 mana that I have. Well, Bancroft's Talon would have given me 100. Do I need stacks? No. That second number, that second sentence is going to take effect and continue to grow as I grow level. So look, I got more power because my mana number is increasing as well as everything else. But getting it early, if I'm only taking it for the power, isn't as efficient as going to grab an item that is going to have similar power and better utility. Build the book early when you are hemorrhaging mana and don't have the luxury of returning to Fountain quickly and easily. In other words, this item is a conquest item.
Okay.
Clash, no problem. I'll go back. I'll be back in 4 seconds. Right? I don't need 750 more mana sticking around. And certainly early. You know, if I had this built at 6th level, I got 120. But the passive, what's its passive? Oh, it doesn't have one, right? So it in and of itself is only giving you one thing, the power, some mana, and MP5, but the truth is, for similar costs, well, let's do a one-to-one comparison. If we were talking about having our choice between these two, and I'll even throw in the factor of wait until 9th level because the cost differential, and saying, you know, by then I'll have had that. So, do I want to see this spike up to $189? Or do I want to go to 238? I'm going to take the 238, my friend. I don't need those stacks. The stacks provide 22.5 additional power. Fully stacked. That's it. So the item is useful for what it gives you right away without a single damn stack. Oh yeah, the stacks will give you the additional mana, which is the blue bar, right? But in a mode where you have the luxury of time, don't like freak out over that. It's just not worth it. And don't prioritize it in and above other things. Understand and make tactical decisions specific to your god, the mode, and what's happening. How much do I value that 750 mana and 22.5 power versus the versatility that comes with other choices that are probably cheaper. Now, you want to build that as your very last item? Sure, what the hell? It's going to take that 3% and instantly give it to you as power on top of the 100 base. Hell yeah. And people tell me all the time, dude, you're such a noob. You don't know what you're doing. And I said, no, actually, I probably have more hours in the game than your entire team. But whatever. Oh, by the way, go look me up on Guardians of Middle Earth. I was the number 3 player in the world. that coming a year late, and then when the server went down and I switched to Xbox, I made it to 30s years late. It's now you hear me coughing. I'll turn 50 in May. I'm old. I now have permanent health problems. My hand-eye coordination will never be the same. And frankly, being sick all the time now, I have not put the time and energy into this game like I did with others. I don't have spreadsheets for everything. This isn't me coughing because I'm smoking dope. I don't smoke dope. This is the unfortunate state of my health. But I understand mechanics of the game just fine. I have a rationale behind it. I watch other pros. I listen. There are times that I make mistakes, absolutely. But I'm not just taking cookie cutter builds that I saw elsewhere. I'm trying to explain to myself and to others the thought process so that as items change, as god abilities change, you can make those assessments for yourself. I typically want a big power spike at this level. So I think in this spot you have several good contenders. If you were to go to this or this or let's go get max cooldown. So if you build each one of these items in this sequence, you're at 50% cooldown, or 20 of the maximum 40, so half of what's available. That would get you to your max cooldown. This would get you to 75%. This would say, I have a little bit more power than I had here, but it's selfish. But if I get hurt, I suddenly get a power spike. So if the problem is that all of a sudden Loki is bursting on me, that's a very real use case. So which of those ways will I go? Oh, all of a sudden Loki comes out of invisibility, hits me with his ult, attack. Oh, now I'm really hurt. When I hit him with my 1, I'm not hitting him with a bonus 100, I'm hitting him with a bonus 200 power. Okay, that's not necessarily going to save your life, but I understand the thought process, right? Hey, my party's bitching. I feel like I got to provide more heals to them. I want to get those snipes out for days. Sure, no problem. And any of those, hard to argue with. Just have a thought process behind whatever that is. At this spot in your build, you're going to want a power spike. The two best power spikes are going to be Book of Thoth or Rod of Tahuti, and I already showed you why I would favor one versus the other. So something like this wouldn't be bad. You only have 2 spots left. 2 spots because you're 6th slot, but then you're eventually going to sell your starter item, right? And come in with something else. So at this point, if you are still in this friggin' game, you are now moved beyond the midpoint and are hitting that late point of the game, and you got to make determinations about, is somebody on the team effectively pushing towers, or is my hunter not built any penetration because they're crit happy? And hell, are they even getting kills, or are they just getting farmed? If you need penetration to deal with tanks or to push structures, Obsidian Shard, absolutely. But there are going to be plenty of games where nobody's built a single piece of magical protection. So you could go get more flat protection and still be punching through what they have, but have a more useful secondary effect, like anti-heal. Or this one's tricky. So this is flat penetration for the instance of the ability that you hit them for. This is for 5 seconds. You've reduced their magical protections, meaning that applies for all the subsequent magic damage that you're doing and other people are doing. So a Guardian supplementing the team by taking this on, so that, yeah, the Guardian hit a little bit harder, but what he's really doing is helping the mage hit harder. So if you wanted to supplement with some other flat pen, sure. if you wanted to go get more lifesteal, if you wanted more cooldown, like this will be very common. Keep in mind, I was at 30, so if I'm gonna put this in this spot, it's gonna be because I sold this so that I maintained the 40, right? And get it out a little bit faster. And then in my last slot, again, I'm making a determination. Do I need that flat pen? Is structure not a damage, and really we could win, but we're just farming because it's fun. Sure, go ahead. Start them stacks. So I think you've seen the concept that, yeah, we're talking raw specifically, but we're not. We're saying that these are the core items for more mages than not. And let's just take a moment, talk relics. The safest 4 relics in the game. Once you get some timing down and understanding, most people will go to these 2. The first will clear crowd control effects, slows, stuns, that kind of nonsense. The second one says, give me a 2-minute shield. 2 minute. I wish 2 minute. Actually, it would be horrible if it was 2 minutes. It would be horrible if it was 4 seconds instead of 2. But let me put a 2-second invulnerability on me in which I'm silenced and prevented from using any potion, any ability, any other relic, any of that nonsense. But I can run. So those 2. The other 2 that I think are always viable, and probably even better when you're learning, no matter who you are. And this will be controversial. Any god can, to get used to the mechanic of shooting off their relics, start with these 2 in either order. Because this is this a good time to use this? Is this a good time to use this? The answer for is this a good time is much easier here. Do I need mana or health? Do I need to chase them down because they're so close to death? So close! They're just slightly out of range, or holy crap, I gotta get the hell out of here. Is my ally so close to death? Boy, I wish I could heal them, but my ability was on cooldown. Oh, my ally's out of mana, and they're starting to back. Boink! There you go. There's your mana back, buddy. Stay. Let's finish ripping down that Phoenix. How many times have you been at the Phoenix and had to retreat, not because you guys were hurt, but because people started running out of mana, or they're a little bit hurt, but they're scared. And had you been able to med your hunter, he would have stayed for the extra shot or 2, which would have made the difference. But no, you had to back, and by the time you made it back, the Phoenix already healed back 80% of what was done, and it's rinse and repeat, and you hit that, 5th stage of the game I talked about. Meditation gets past all that. Yes, meditation was nerfed, and yes, meditation isn't as balls out awesome as it once was. Doesn't mean it's garbage, though. And if you're strictly talking about, is this a good time, is this not, can it not only apply to me, but my buddy, regardless of whether he's literally somebody I know in real life and I'm talking to, or some rando trash guy who's been feeding all game, these 2 things can get you and your quote-unquote feeding allies out of a lot of problems and or confirm kills. These will be more solo-based things, but very important to master the timing of. And so in 90% of my videos, you'll see this as a sequence, depending on what your thought process will be. So, that was a fuck ton of coverage. Let's play.
Let's do it.
All right, I'm going to end this broadcast and start a new one.